History of the secret order of Shaktipat. The order of Shaktipat has secretly existed in India since ancient times. It is said in Yoga Vasishtha in ancient Sanskrit scripture that Shaktipat was performed on Lord Sri Rama by his guru sage Vasishtha. Lord Sri Rama was the prince of an ancient kingdom of India and was popularly accepted as a divine incarnation. The order has been in existence ever since, unknown to the majority of humanity. Perhaps it existed even before the time of Lord Sri Rama. As readers go through this book, perhaps they will get a glimpse into the reasons for its secrecy. It is widely believed that every 600 years, the order alternates between operating secretly and publicly. The last known link to this lineage of monks was a yogini who lived approximately 700 years ago in the village called Padmanpura in the modern-day city of Srinagar in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The village now forms part of the outskirts of the city. It is called Pampore. This great yogini used to roam around the city in torn clothes. She went by the names Laldev, Laleshwari and Lala. Readers can access the teachings of this great yogini easily on the World Wide Web. She is referred to as Laldev in the modern times. However, Her Holiness' connection to the order of Shaktipat is known only among the fraternity of the order. What happens to the order of Shaktipat for the next 600 years or so after her time is unknown. Only a small amount of information is available on 3 of the yogis or practitioners of yoga during this long intervening period: Swami Paramananda, Triloki Baba, and Swami Mukundananda. I cannot write anything further on these yogis as not much information about them is available. Here, I would like to remind the readers that I am writing about yogis. Yogis are not like religious scholars. They are not even like any other saints or swamis who may be heading large institutions or organizations. They are a class apart. As per ancient Sanskrit texts, they are even greater than the celestials or gods. They are the purest manifestation of the divinity in human form. Nothing can equal their spiritual brilliance. In fact, they possess such supernatural powers that they can create parallel worlds or another universe as such, if they wish. As a result, petty earthly issues do not matter to them. Readers can now easily imagine their brilliance. The order of Shaktipat came into the limelight in recent times because of the great yogi or practitioner of yoga, Swami Gangadhar Tirtha, who lived in the modern-day city of Puri in the state of Orissa more than 100 years ago. He is known to have initiated only one student into Siddha Mahayoga. Swami Narayan Dev Tirtha was the only practitioner who received initiation into this yoga system. This yogi was born in what is now Bangladesh. His Holiness later initiated the 3rd generation of practitioners of this lineage. This 3rd generation of practitioners subsequently initiate the 4th generation and also form the beginning of their own lineage. I have given a brief tree of the entire lineage of monks whom I could trace, and also the list of various ashrams of this order, at least the ones that could be traced at the end of the book. However, since it is not possible to write about the entire order of monks in this book, from this point onwards I will focus on one particular lineage, that of a yogi called Yogananda, who belonged to the 3rd generation. This yogi was born in the place called Junagadh in the state of Gujarat. His Holiness has initiated several practitioners into Siddha Mahayoga. However, Since it is not possible to write about the entire lineage of monks under His Holiness, I will further focus on one particular lineage, that of a yogi called Swami Vishnu Tirtha of the 4th generation. However, before proceeding further to describe this 4th generation of monks, I would like to say a word about Yogananda of the 3rd generation. Unlike his fellow practitioners, His Holiness refused to wear saffron clothes and renounce worldly life. Here, I would like to dwell upon this particular way of life in a more detailed manner. There are two kinds of yogis. The majority of them generally renounce worldly life, wear saffron clothes, and live away from mainstream society in remote places. They focus on cleaning their minds of all sensual impressions so that they may achieve the state of samadhi, a state of thoughtlessness. Their asceticism and practice of yoga generates powerful vibrations that impact the world in a very positive way. These vibrations generate peace and harmony among the human race, the animal kingdom, from their yoga practice, also within the ecosystem. In a nutshell, the world benefits from their yoga practice in a very subtle and intangible manner. They have managed to quit the external world and focus entirely on their internal world. They struggle to bring their minds to the state of thoughtlessness, which is the terminal objective in all yoga systems. However, quite a few yogis have failed in this struggle due to attractions of the worldly life and non-resolution of their mind. As a result, they had to return to their normal regular lifestyle, thus causing themselves several spiritual injury. For a fallen yogi, there is no prescribed and known immediate remedial measure in terms of yoga technique or religious practice, taking into account the ancient Sanskrit scriptures as authority, whether it appears rational or irrational. It takes a long time before a fallen yogi can return to his or her original path of yoga. Fearing this, some yogis prefer to remain in mainstream society and practice yoga. This might appear to be mentally comforting since there is no danger of falling down from the yogic path. However, it is merely a question of how one looks at it. In the former path, the yogi only falls down due to the weak resolve of his or her mind, as a result of which he or she becomes prey to the attraction of worldly things. However, he or she availed him or herself of a fair chance when he or she quit the external world. However, it is merely a question of how one looks at it. In the former path, the yogi only falls down due to the weak results of his or her mind, as a result of which he or she becomes prey to the attraction of worldly things. However, he or she availed him or herself of a fair chance when he or she quit the external worldly life, donned saffron clothes, and lived away from mainstream society. It should have been easier for him or her to progress in yoga. In the later case, a yogi refuses to leave mainstream society. However, he now has the greatest challenges to face to not become prey to the attractions readily available. However, the greatest advantage here is that the yogi yet again avails a fair chance to square off all his or her merits and demerits accumulated in the past while physically experiencing the resultant fruits of past deeds without any emotional attachment to the actions performed. In the former case, where the yogi was living away from the mainstream society as a recluse, he could only square off his deeds through the practice of yoga. However, even in the case of where the yogi is experiencing the resultant fruits of his or her deeds physically by living amidst mainstream society, the yogi is still deemed to be practicing yoga. So when it comes to practice of yoga, it makes no difference whether the yogi is living away from or amidst mainstream society. It is permanently altered state of mind that matters. The means employed are not relevant. That is why I have said that it all depends upon how one looks at it. Both our methods have their own advantages and disadvantages, so one cannot really say which is better way of yogic life. Perhaps destiny itself decides the way of life for a yogi. So, Yogananda was a yogi who had voluntarily chosen not to take the path of seclusion. I will now further focus on the lineage of Swami Vishnu Tirtha of the 4th generation. This yogi was born in the modern state of Haryana in India at a place called Jhajjar near the town of Bhiwani. His Holiness was a lawyer by profession and was initiated into the path of Siddha Mahayoga by Yogananda. His Holiness developed an existing ashram or yogic retreat in the modern day city of Devas in the state of Madhya Pradesh. This ashram is called Narayana Kuti Sannyas Ashram. His Holiness later established one more ashram on the banks of the river. That is why I have said that it all depends upon how one looks at it. Both the methods have their own advantages and disadvantages, so one cannot really say which is better way of yogic life. Perhaps destiny itself decides the way of life for a yogi. So, Yogananda was a yogi who had voluntarily chosen not to take the path of seclusion. I will now further focus on the lineage of Swami Vishnu Tirtha for the 4th generation. This yogi was born in the modern state of Haryana in India at a place called Jhajjar near the town of Bhiwani. His Holiness was a lawyer by profession and was initiated into the path of Siddha Mahayoga by Yogananda. His Holiness developed an existing ashram or yogic retreat in the modern day city of Devas in the state of Madhya Pradesh. This ashram is called Narayana Kuti Sannyas Ashram. His Holiness later established one more ashram on the banks of the river Ganga in the modern day city of Rishikesh. This ashram is called Yoga Shri Peeth. His Holiness authored several books on this particular yoga system and thus can be considered as one of the first men to popularize the subject in modern history. His Holiness has initiated several practitioners and the fraternity branched out across the country. Since it is not possible to write about the entire lineage of monks under His Holiness, I will now further focus on the lineage of another great yogi called Swami Shivam Tirtha of the 5th generation. This yogi was born in the city of Lahore in modern-day Pakistan. Later, His Holiness was instrumental in widely popularizing the yoga system by authoring several books in Hindi. The books have been translated into several Indian regional languages. His Holiness was also put in charge of the Narayana Kuti Sannyas Ashram by the Master Swami Vishnu Tirtha. His Holiness initiated many practitioners into this particular yoga system, and my own guru, Swami Sahajananda Tirtha, who lives in the city of Vijayawada in the modern-day state of Andhra Pradesh in India, was one of the practitioners under Swami Shivam Tirtha. His Holiness belongs to the 6th generation of monks, starting from Swami Gangadhar Tirtha.